Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Grow Yourself, where we love to bring on experts, thought leaders, interesting people, people with an interesting background or interesting work or an interesting message, all for the purpose of helping us learn, grow, and change, even if it's just a little bit every day. My favorite superhero growing up wasn't Superman, like most of my friends. It was actually, and this is, I'm being very authentic about this, it was actually Rocketman. One of my earliest memories is sitting in a military theater in Bad Tolz, Germany, which is in the Bavarian Alps, watching some of the old, I guess it was the old Rocketman serials. I thought it was a movie, but sometimes in those days they would bring in uh, TV series, and play them at the theaters on military bases and so forth. So, in any event, I still can see me sitting in the theater and I can still remember looking at the screen, watching Rocket Man and how he would run a few steps, jump, and take off. And I've literally got chills going up my spine now from thinking about it because it mesmerized me. There was just something magical about watching somebody fly. In fact, and I don't know if it was a result of this movie or whatever, but I could tell you that nearly my entire childhood, even into my adult, I frequently dreamed that I could fly, and I mean frequently. I would soar through the sky, hover above the trees. I'd land in a tree. It was just so fascinating. And there was a few times that I even broke through the clouds and went up a little bit higher, but it was all so effortlessly. And as a kid, I can honestly say I couldn't wait to go to bed sometimes, hoping that that dream would happen again. And even into my adulthood, not as much anymore, but I still think about doing that. So then life did something that I could never have imagined. And that was, and some of you all know this, that in 1985, my wife Jane and I, we were performers in the Super Bowl halftime show, 19 with a group called Tops and Blue. That's a longer story if you don't know who they are, but it was a big halftime show. These were big ones. This was like right on the heels of Disney and so forth, who did some incredible shows. So, and the halftime show, well, the name of the halftime show, wait for it, was The World of Children's Dreams. And wouldn't you know it, one of the featured and probably the featured performer was what I think was the original Rocket Man, flying in a real jetpack before millions of people all around the world. And so I'm standing there in the middle of this halftime show. Little, could I have imagined that 40 years after seeing Rocket Man, I'd be sitting there, not quite 40 years, but anyways, I would be sitting there with watching on the field, watching perhaps the last people on earth to carry that incredible legacy forward. And then life has a funny way of connecting the dots. But as meaningful as those memories are, they're really just a doorway into, I would say, today's conversation. Because unlike the little boy who dreamed of flying, my guest today actually did it. For a decade, Dan Schlund flew a rocket belt professionally across 6 continents, performing in front of audiences around the world. He lived a life most of us could only dream of. We could only imagine. So you think about that. I saw Rocket Man in the theater, dreamed all my life, ended up at a Super Bowl halftime show with the original Rocket Man, and now here I am sitting across, a Zoom conversation about to talk to, well, I'm just going to call him my childhood hero. But here's the thing. This is more than just about Rocket Man, and it's not about me at all. Um, Dan, he suffered devastating burns that required extensive skin grafts, and years later, another crash left him with a broken neck. Along the way, he lost not only the career he loved, but much of that identity that came with it. And that's where this conversation becomes one that we can all relate to, because whether it's a career, a relationship, our health, or a dream we've spent pursuing, life has a way of asking every one of us the same question: who are you when the thing that once defined you is gone? Dan's story isn't simply about flying, it's about rebuilding. It's about discovering that your greatest purpose may not be found uh, holding on to yesterday, but in having, let's say, the courage to embrace what's next. And so today we'll talk about fear, resilience, reinvention, and why Dan's personal motto is don't let your last experience be a bad one. Maybe one of the most powerful reminders that our next chapter can become one of our best. And we will certainly be talking about Dan, the Rocket Man. And so it is with great pleasure that I have Dan Schlund, Rocket Man, here with me on Grow Yourself. Dan, thank you so much for being with me.
Kevin, I think that's probably the most gracious introduction I've ever had, and I'm really proud to be here with you, and I appreciate all the kind words that you just said. That's there's something about when you can show a video, you can talk about it, you can see pictures,
Mm-hmm.
but unless you see it live, you never experience the feeling, because people not only remember the performance, they remember where they were, what the date was,
That's
what
right.
they were wearing. It was such a big promotional tool, but just it sticks in your psyche because, yes, everybody dreams of flying, even me.
I believe that. And before I get into sort of my first question that I'm going to ask you, but I want to stay with where you're at right now, and that is to just, is there any way that you can articulate what it feels like to fly?
Well, I'll take away the anxiety and the prep and all that stuff. But what you do is once I get strapped into that thing, and basically, we call it a rocket belt because it's technically a rocket motor. Sometimes we call it jetpack. We just use the terms interchangeably because that's
Okay.
what's used in today's verbiage.
Yeah.
But it's got two handles and it's got three tanks attached to what we call a corset. And the corset wraps around you and they strap you in and they strap you in tight.
I
I
can believe
mean,
that.
the the shoulder straps get pulled on really tight. The leg
Mm.
straps are tight. The waist strap, and the thing weighs 160 pounds
Oh, hello.
when it's fully fueled. When it's
Oh,
empty, it's only 90 pounds, but 160 when it's fully fueled. So you're sitting on a stand. They get you strapped in. You stand up. You transfer all that weight on your back, and you've got to lean forward a little bit so that you're balanced. And you're sitting there, and you got your earplugs in and you can't really see or hear anything that's going on around you. And you're looking at the person who's going to give you your cue. And you just wait. And as soon as they drop their arm, pow, you turn on that throttle and instant liftoff from the ground. It's very violent,
I was
the
wondering.
pop. But you don't go shooting up into the sky like a firework. You just pop off the ground and immediately you find your center. Then it's like a helicopter. You can hover it, you can pirouette, you can forward, back, take it up as high as you want, as long as you can get back down the land.
Oh, wow.
And when you take off and you fly, it almost feels like you're being lifted up by a crane. And it's a real smooth flight.
Wow.
It's not bumpy, it's extremely loud. It's about 160 decibels. So, and you've witnessed that in person, it just
Hmm. Oh, yeah,
screams.
it really does. Now,
And
with the earplugs in, is it still loud in your ears, or is it fairly
yeah,
quiet?
I've got my ears are ringing now. I
Oh,
just have 24/7 tinnitus,
mm,
because no matter how much protection you put on, sometimes some of that sound gets by.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah,
even with the custom earplugs, it's still.
Yeah, the frequencies are just too powerful, I guess, and
One
the
of the one of the prices you pay to be Rocketman.
yeah.
But you come in, you fly, and now everything's very choreographed. You're looking ahead. I already pretty much know the route I'm going to take at this. When I hit this spot, I should be at 50 feet. When I hit this spot,
Mm.
80 feet, make a left turn, come in. And then you come in for landing, and you've got a stopwatch right next to your throttle because you only have 30 seconds of propellant. Your flight
Oh,
time's only 30 seconds.
oh.
Now, what you saw in 1985 was my trainer, the guy who created the Rocketman persona, Kenny Gibson. That
Mm.
rocket belt would only fly for 21 seconds. So he built two newer ones, improved the
Oh,
technology. So as you come in, you're looking down, you're looking at that stopwatch, making sure that you've got enough fuel to get down to the ground and you can adjust the speed that you descend. And then sometimes if I have a little extra time, I'll sit there and I'll hover. Very difficult to do. Hover in one spot and just do a little pirouette. Just a nice
oh,
little
that's
turn.
incredible.
Think and set down toes first. That's an ideal flight. And later on, we'll get into the
Not so
issues
ideal.
when those ideal flights go haywire.
I will say that, and I don't know if you've watched that Super Bowl halftime show,
Oh,
but
many times.
okay, so okay, that was a dumb question. Okay, so but there's one thing that caught my attention. I've actually never heard anybody talk about it. There was somebody standing on the sideline when he landed,
Yes.
and the look on their face was like, "Oh, thank God." I mean, it was really pretty striking. So watch it again and see if you can see that guy. It was like it almost looked like I wasn't sure if we were going to make this, or something. It was an interesting thing. And but what you were saying, how you described everything, and of course that was a newer model. It maybe goes to say that you just never know what's going to happen here, and if it's all going to come off exactly as you have choreographed, and certainly those sorts of things. So let's just watch this performance, and you can comment along the way.
And this is pretty exciting. Whenever you're strapped into something like that, it's really hard to keep your cool.
Gosh, I can't imagine.
And you've got to carry that 160 pounds. So, this is one of our flagship performances of all time. Now, he took off the throttle lock, do a little thumbs up to the audience. Gotta eat up a little time there. Pop that throttle. Boom. You see that? That's because the motor was cold from sitting inside that thing for so long. Okay, zipping around. He's just showing off with his legs a little bit. Nice little spin there. He's coming in. And this is just a beautiful landing. Watch, he just tiptoes out of it. And bink, bink, bink. That's how you make it look professional. Very difficult flight.
Sorts of things. So how high can you go with a jetpack?
I've never tested it. I've been well over 100 feet.
Mm,
But you could probably get well over 1,000, even a little bit higher.
no kidding.
But it's still too low to carry a parachute, and it's too, the world record flight for height is 152 feet. Now I've taken it over 100 feet in the air, but it's just something I've never wanted to attempt.
Yeah. May I just ask, and again, I can't wait to get into more of this, but I just have to stay here for a minute because I'm so fascinated by it. One, um, where's the technology going these days? I can't imagine that AI is not going to play a significant role here. I guess I don't know whether it's in the internal mechanics or I'm not sure. Just where is it going? Is this going to be? Well, yeah. Just where's this technology going?
So you've got two kinds of jetpacks. You got the rocket belt and you have an actual jetpack. And you're already seeing some of this out there. One runs on a rocket motor, which is basically you open up a throttle, it lets in propellant, there's a reaction, you fly. The other is turbines, like
Hmm.
a jet engine. They're just small little jet engines. And there's pros and cons to both of them. Now, this technology was the very first free flight was in 1961.
Oh my.
April 21st, 1961 was the first ever free flight of the rocket belts. And since that date, to me, I'm the 11th person to ever professionally fly a rocket belt, which means more people have walked on the moon than actually was a professional rocket man.
Incredible.
The problem with the rocket belt is it was originally created for the Army. And what they were going to do is they were going to cross bridges and rivers and canyons to go fight the enemy. But a couple things, too loud, not enough flight time, too easy to shoot down. So they mothballed it until it became an entertainment spectacle to what it is today. Now, the newer technology, and we'll talk about gravity in particular, where that's the one where there's thrusters in handles that they hold on to.
I've seen those, yeah.
Yeah. And those have 3 points of thrust, the arms and the back. We have 2 points of thrust, and that's the 2 thrust tubes. But they can fly for 4.5 minutes. But something you notice about them, you don't see them going much more over 50 feet in the air unless it's over water. And the reason for that is that there's more mechanical issues that can happen with a jet engine than with a simple rocket motor. And then you have the wind up and the wind down of the engine. So with the technology that I fly, I can take off and I can fly it like it's a hot rod. I mean, I've taken it up to 85 miles an hour, up 100 feet. You can zoom it around, spin it around, all this stuff.
Goodness.
The jet ones, you don't have as much response to the throttle, to the thrust, and so forth. So it's a little bit more of a cleaner ride, where ours is more of a hot rod.
Yeah, you're talking about a Lamborghini versus a Mercedes or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
but now the propellants are different.
Totally different. We use hydrogen peroxide.
Stop.
Can you believe that?
Stop this.
Now, before your audience goes into their medicine cabinet and starts collecting all their hydrogen peroxide, just know that the stuff in your medicine cabinet is 3%, where our stuff is 90%. It's very difficult to make, very difficult to store, very difficult to have the right properties to make sure that when it hits that catalyst, it's actually going to decompose. And what happens is when it decomposes, it turns into superheated steam, and that superheated steam is coming out the tubes 3 times the speed of sound, generating 800 horsepower.
And if somebody, this may sound dumb, but if somebody's hand would it burn them, or would it be like cut them? Or
no, and it happens often when you're fueling the rocket belts, when you're working with it. We call it, you get tagged, you get burned. And basically what it does is it oxidizes your skin. And it turns it ash white.
Oh, geez. Super
white for about an hour or so until the body can replenish the moisture and stuff back. And it's, unless you were to douse your whole body, you survive it, but it's painful. It's a chemical burn.
I can imagine. Okay, gotcha. What is the one thing, maybe two, but maybe the one thing that if the technologists or whatever could figure out relative to the jetpack or whichever, it would completely change. It would advance it in a serious way. What's that one thing that would really advance the jetpack?
Well, you're looking at definitely a turbine sort of jet engine. That's the tricky part, because you can't get any more out of the rocket fuel. I see. And the limiting factor is weight. You can only carry so much weight, not just weight that you can carry on your back, but weight for what that little rocket motor will lift. Because between me and the rocket belts, the weight's just shy of 400 pounds. So you need to have a rocket motor lift 400 pounds.
I
Same thing
got you.
with a jet engine, you know, and that way you can get a little bit more time with the jet fuel because it runs on jet fuel or diesel, but mostly it runs on jet fuel. And it lasts longer. That's why you get the 4.5 minutes compared to the 30
I see.
seconds. But honestly, the technology, unless they come up with something new, we're not going to be strapping it on going to the supermarket to buy
I
eggs
see.
and milk and flying home. It's
Mm,
really just kind of an entertainment thing, and it
yeah.
will be for a long time.
So, given the constraints, it's sort of tapped out as far as what can be done to improve it without something, you know, I don't know. Anyways, how,
More
f-
efficiency, yeah.
yeah, more efficiency, man. Just so fascinating. Just wow. So, so Dan, now back to my question that I typically ask everybody. Would you share with the audience? I'd like to ask it in two parts, but I'm most interested in the second part. Who is Dan Schlund and who was Little Dan? Tell us about Little Dan growing up.
Okay, well, the first thing is you know, I'm kind of a religious guy, so
Good.
I call myself a follower of Christ, cleverly designed as a rocket man.
Love that.
So that's kind of that in a nutshell. Dan, when he was young, I hate to use the term daredevil because I'm really kind of a trained stunt professional.
Okay.
That's
Fair
my
enough.
background.
Yeah.
But little Dan was pretty much a daredevil, kind of pushing the envelope of what he could do, liking to show off for the girls in the neighborhood and, you know, scaring mom. Mom, look at me. Look what I can do. Anything that they said, no, don't do it.
Dan
I
did it.
did it.
Was it Danny?
Yeah, it was
It was
Danny. That's
Danny.
my son's name too. Now I
Oh,
got a Danny.
how sweet is that? Where did you grow up?
Santa Clarita, California, just outside of Los Angeles,
Oh my. And
kind of
where are you
close to
at
the Magic
now?
Mountain. I'm in McKinney, Texas,
Oh,
which is
that's right.
just
Yeah.
north of Dallas.
Very, very interesting. Yeah. Okay. So little Danny was a bit of a daredevil, you know, and if they said don't do it, you went and did it. What else about you? How did you
Well,
think?
my dad would always take us dirt bike riding. So we'd
Mm,
go dirt bike riding. I was shooting guns. I mean, at the age of 4,
wow.
dirt bikes, shooting guns, climbing rocks. At 13, we'd go hunting. Never caught anything, but tell you the truth, I never wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, but we would do a lot of travel. And then as I got older, I started doing stunt work. And my buddy of mine and I, we were both trying to become professional stuntmen. So we would rent cars like a Mustang GT, and we would practice, you know, doing donuts and skidding and reverse 180s. And we'd practice that stuff, and we'd go rappelling off of buildings and swinging off of train tracks. And I
Wow.
mean, you name it, we did it. And then for those of you that are familiar with Magic Mountain,
Mm-hmm.
which has a 375-foot tower,
Mm.
I snuck in once and we climbed up, climbed up, climbed up. And then I climbed a flagpole on the very top, got a picture of it. Now,
Wow.
for those of you that don't believe me, I have a documentary coming out and it has information on the gravity jetpack, the history of where the rocket belt came from, my redemption of getting back in it, and actual video footage of me climbing the Magic Mountain Tower,
That's
which I'm
crazy.
I'm hoping that the statute of limitations are up because I don't want to get in
Get
trouble for
arrested. Yeah, at
that.
this point. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but that's how old were you?
Oh geez, 20
Oh man,
less than
that's
that was like 35 years ago.
yeah.
So I think I'm safe.
Yeah, I think you're probably safe, but it just seems like at 20, I mean, I we all have a lot more bravado and whatever spunk when we were young, but that's pretty freaking scary, to do
Well, I
that.
repelled I repelled off the Hollywood sign. My buddy and I we climbed up to the Hollywood sign and we repelled off the H and the O And every time
Yeah.
I'd go up there to do it, we'd hit another letter. So I've only gone up there
Yeah.
twice.
Well, I see why you're a religious man because you're thanking God every day that you're still alive, that you survived your younghood,
Well, you know what's funny is that it didn't start off with a prayer of thank you. At 8 or 9 years old, it was a prayer of, this is what I want to do,
Yeah.
Lord. And I didn't know much,
Sure.
but basically it was a prayer that, hey, I want to have a dream. I mean, I want to have a job where I can travel the world, and I want to do something that no one else has done that's adventurous. I want to live that, and I want to dedicate that to you. And boy, did he not disappoint.
Wow, that's intriguing. So
Just
I do want to ask though about what led you to think about becoming a stuntman and doing these sorts of things? I mean, did you just it just evolve or, you know,
I had a knack for it
okay.
with with the motorcycle riding and
Yeah.
my adventurous spirits. I just had a knack for it. I wasn't into sports like baseball, football, soccer, any of that, but I love to be physical.
Mm.
And, I've done thousands of high falls jumping off 30-foot platforms for the audience, and hundreds of times on fire for live action stunt shows. I played Batman, Indiana Jones. I was a cowboy that would get shot off, and I got to travel to a couple of different countries doing it. And it was just, I was getting paid to play.
That's incredible. I would assume, and if we could sort of move forward into your stunt as we are now, but talk maybe about it just for a few minutes. You know, um, it isn't something that you can just go out and do. You have to really train, and it's hard work, I would imagine.
Very hard. It's like, and this translates to any profession. You don't just step in and get that lead role. You do all the crap work first, and you earn your way, and you prove yourself. And one
Mm,
thing I have to say is work ethic.
mm,
I was never the first one picked to do all the big stunts. I was never the first one picked to manage the show or to do this, but I worked harder than anyone else.
mm.
And when I was given the chance, I had the skill to do it, and I was very consistent. So between the work ethic and the consistency, even though I wasn't the number one chosen person, I always got that number one spot.
Wow. That's quite a story, because I on many podcasts, I think I've had a conversation with guests about this idea of, how do you become successful? And the one thing that always comes out is what you just said, work, work it, work hard,
Yeah.
smart, whatever the case might be. Okay, so you you graduated from high school. Can you just quickly pull us through, your younger life and then into the stunt world a little bit more, and then we're going to get into the jetpack and all that sort of thing.
So I graduated from high school, and I was a mess. I had no direction.
Mm,
I didn't really I took some courses in college, nothing much.
hmm.
Just wasn't my thing. I had no direction. I remember just sitting there. I was like 26, 27, sitting on the chair watching Star Trek, just crying
Mm.
because I didn't know what I was going to do with my life.
Well,
And I was trying to figure it out. And then I was looking through the college classes, and I saw that there's an EMT course. And those are the people that work on an
yeah.
ambulance, emergency medical technicians. I said, man, this is right up my alley. You know, I it's like stunt work. You're
Yeah.
acting on the seat of your pants, and
Yeah.
you have to perform. You're going into situations that you're unknown of, and I was already con- comfortable with that. So I got that, and then for 4 years I worked on ambulance in the
Okay.
Los Angeles basin, Hollywood. Saw some crazy stuff, and
I
this was Wild West time. This was before GPS or any of that,
mm,
so
tell me
that
one
was a
crazy
lot of fun.
story, if you will. Just one crazy one. I can't resist, man.
One crazy story. Um, this poor lady, she was about 90 years old, and she had to be taken in for a psych evaluation. And it's called a 5150, where you're mandated to be taken on a 72-hour hold.
Mm.
And we went in there, and her apartment was full up to here with trash. You saw Christmas trees from years past. And the only way you can get to the bathroom, to the living room, was to climb up and crawl over all of the stuff. There wasn't even a passageway, so we had to take her in. And this lady fought us, and she almost won. She was so strong. And we're, come on, sweet pea, we gotta go. You gotta come with us. There's a court order, and she's fighting us. And and when
That's
you're
crazy.
trying to detain a woman, you got to be careful where you grab. A guy, you
Sure.
just grab wherever.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
women, you got to be a little bit careful. Grab the arm, don't grab anything
yeah,
else.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. 90 years
so,
old, boy. Goodness gracious.
oh my goodness, she was like a Hungarian beast. She was just mass muscle, and I'm telling you what. But she needed help, and we were there, and we had to take her for help. It was something that
Yeah, at some point, society has to step in and help people that are just beyond help for themselves or even those around them that can help them.
that's just a fun story.
That's crazy, though. That's a crazy story. Okay, so so then what about so when you stepped into then after paramedic, you what? Uh,
Then I had the opportunity to produce a stunt show in Taiwan, a live action cowboy stunt show in Taiwan. And I had only done one stunt show in my life, but I was able to create a presentation that was especially for 1997,
mm,
which was very, professional looking. And I said, these are the stunts we're going to bring in, not knowing exactly how I was going to do it yet. And they flew me out there. I looked at the stage, and then there was another competing company that said, "You know what? You can't do it. Why don't you come work for us, and we'll give you something to do?" And that pissed me off. And I said, "Look, drop our price, make sure we get it." And we went in there and just produced a wonderful stunt show. We were setting people on fire, jumping off buildings.
holy
It was
cow.
funny, lots of special effects.
But how did
But
you get into that though? So you went from a
oh,
paramedic, yeah.
okay. So I used to work at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and we were doing a high dive show. And I was just a technician running the high dive show, got to know, the different divers. Well, that same company was producing a stunt show in Virginia. So I applied, and
Hmm.
I got the actor role.
Oh, nice.
And as soon as I got there, they said, you know what? And I was like, teach me how to do the fire stunt, teach me how to do the high fall, teach me how to do this. The work ethic thing just kicked in. And pretty soon I wasn't even doing the acting role anymore. I was just one of the regular stunt performers.
Wow.
And
That's crazy.
then, bounced around, did a lot of little stuff, but these little opportunities came up. And then after Taiwan, that same company hired me to go to Holland for a year at another theme park where I played an Indiana Jones character.
Hmm.
So I was kind of like the main character there. And that was just fun. Got to
Gosh, can't
travel
imagine. Yeah.
Europe, ran with the Bulls in Spain, saw Paris, and my dad flew out. It was,
Oh, that sounds too good. I can't help but to ask because you mentioned something earlier about climbing that 350 whatever, and then you just mentioned about Taiwan. I've got to ask you, did you watched Alex Honnold, right, climb that building in Taiwan?
yes,
Okay.
he's nuts.
No, no.
That's crazy. I want to do that.
Okay, so if you're saying that, then I feel better about it because I'm gonna tell you something, Dan, especially towards the end. I mean, and I'm not sort of a jittery guy. I could barely hold. I was sweating, literally sweating. And when he got towards the end, I had to go stand in a completely different room to watch that. I was dropping f bombs. I was like, the one part that really got me was when he stood up. He was way up there, and then he's walked over to the edge and looked down. I was like, dude, get the hell away from there! Are you out of your freaking mind?
I'm going to tell you something.
What
Flying the
the
rocket
heck?
belt is not the same as that. I would not do that. If I'm standing on the top there, I'm just like you. The
Oh
knees
God.
get weak, the shakiness and all that. But
Yeah.
there's something in our psychology and our evolution where if you're hanging on, the cavemen or hanging on side of the cliff, getting away from the bear. Okay, that's ingrained in your psyche,
Yeah.
for generations. But being lifted up by a jetpack,
Yeah, I
that's
get
not
you.
ingrained in your psyche. My knees never got weak being 100 feet in the air.
I see.
I never
Interesting.
got worried about it because it was very consistent.
Yeah.
But man, put me on the edge of a building. I don't like it.
That's very, very, it's about perception, isn't it?
It is. It
And
doesn't
and
make sense, but
and Honald, I honestly cannot. I mean, I get because he talks about how he took a systematic approach to eliminating fear and and just did it many, many times. I get all that, but nothing explains what he does though. I don't give a crap what you say. That's I think you're right. He's got to be halfway sick. He just seems awful normal. And is that
some people just don't. My anxiety, and we'll get into this, is horrific. I've got
I
to take
see.
medication every day, and it all comes from the crashes and the jetpack
I
and
can
stuff.
imagine.
So there's a price to pay.
Yeah,
But I tell you what, if he falls once
it's
and he
done.
injures himself,
Yeah.
the anxiety is going to creep in. Your body doesn't forget it.
I see what you're saying. Very interesting. So let's get into it now and talk about your world. Take it from wherever you like. Well, I would like to, if you haven't already, just talk about how you eventually got into the jetpack, and then let's move forward from there and talk about your life there.
Perfect transition because when I left Holland, I went to a, a convention called IAPA for International Association of Amusement Parks.
Hmm.
And I'm walking because I wanted to sell more of my stunt shows. I didn't have a booth. I didn't even have business cards. I'm just walking up and down the aisles hoping to make a divine connection somewhere. And I did
Oh,
because there, sitting in one of the booths, was the rocket belt and a beautiful woman sitting at the desk. And I saw that. I said, you know what? I've never seen this before. I said, my name is Dan Schlund. I'm a stunt man, this and that. She goes, well, it's nice to meet you. And we talked for hours. And she said, you know what? You'd make a pretty good pilot. I'm going to introduce you to my husband, Kenny Gibson, who happened to be Chuck Norris's stunt double. So I'm thinking, well, there you go. Maybe I
oh,
can get, yeah,
I did not know that. But listen, I have said for decades, God, he looks like Chuck Norris. I have did not even know what you just said. That's
yeah,
crazy. Go ahead. God
yeah.
rest
Chuck
his
Norris
soul.
is, now Chuck Norris does most of his fights and
Sure.
everything, but it's not him, jumping out of the building
Sure.
or hanging from the helicopter. So
Sure.
anyway, we go out to dinner, and this was 1998, and we talk and everything. And he was kind of a quiet guy. He very intimidating. And here I am, some young kid who's maybe like, oh, and of course I laid in bed for years dreaming about what it'd be like to fly this thing and everything.
Goodness
And I'd
gracious.
keep up with him. I was very persistent
Mm.
for 2 years. It was always like, hey, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, hey, anything coming up my way. And then finally one day they were doing a show in San Francisco. I was up there playing Batman, and they said, hey, why don't you come on out and be part of the crew? I said, yes. So I
Wow.
go out there and I watch it. And that's the first time I've ever seen it fly live. I was amazed. And then Kenny says, why don't you come out to Texas? And this is 1999. And we'll put you on the cable, see how you do. So I fly out there and I get strapped into this thing. I'm like, okay, this is my time to shine. I got to do a good job. I turn that throttle and I'm like a firecracker at the end of a shoestring, all over the place, just looking like an idiot. And I finally land, and you're on a cable, so
Yeah.
you
Can't go
have to
too
be on a
wrong.
cable. So they lower me down, and I'm like, hey, Kenny, I can get this. Let me try it again. I just need a little practice. But Kenny wasn't looking to see if I could fly it. He wanted to see what my reaction to it was. Did it scare me? Was I going to say,
Interesting.
like a lot of people do, no, I don't want to do this. This isn't for me.
Yeah.
He wanted to judge my courage,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
say.
Your mentality. Yeah.
So in October of 2000, I was invited to come out there to start training. Well, we only have so much rocket fuel, and you start training, and I'm traveling with the crew to all these countries, helping with the other pilot, Eric Scott, because there was Kenny, then Eric, and he wanted another pilot, me. So we would travel around and I would manage the shows. So I was learning the behind the scenes and then learning how to maintain the rocket belt apparatus and the support equipment. And then when I would train, basically what you want to do is you want to take off, fly forward, and land. And that's all you want to do on the cable. Up, straight, land. Sounds easy. It's not. Took
Can
me 2 years,
Oh my.
no, a
Oh.
year to just, and that wasn't every day, but whenever we had fuel, and it took a long time. So finally, I get good enough to where I can take off, fly forward, and land. And Kenny says, "All right, now it's time to take you off the cable." And again, very few people have done it. And again, this is all in the documentary. We got all the raw
Can't.
footage.
Oh, that's so
It's
great.
great. So I take off, I fly forward, and I land on the lawn. Beautiful flight. And it was even easier without that stupid cable attached to me.
Yeah.
So I do it a second time. Beautiful. Now, the third time I flew forward, I landed, and I didn't shut off the rocket belt immediately. And I bounced. Kenny grabbed me from behind, and this is where it all went wrong.
Mm.
It jettisoned me into the ground, and it
Oh.
knocked me out cold. Not only did it knock me out cold, but the jetivator had bent inwards. So that 1200-degree superheated steam coming out three
Mm.
times the speed of sound is cooking me alive, my leg. And I had burned, I lost 185 inches of skin on my right leg.
Crap.
I just kind of wake up going in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. I spent 2 months in the hospital, 3 skin graft surgeries. The most painful thing you can imagine
Oh, can't
is
imagine.
with an open wound like that, and they have to scrub it every day just to get the grit and the
Oh
grime out of
God.
it. And I'm
Oof.
laying there in the bed, and Kenny says, you don't have to keep flying. You can quit if you want to. After he spent $100,000 training me, but I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking to myself, if I quit now, I'm going to be living with a scar on my leg for the rest of my life, and I'm going to feel like a failure because I didn't get back on it. And this all comes from stunt work. If you have a bad fall, you immediately go up and you do another one because the last experience that you have, you don't want it to be a bad one. You can fail, but don't make it a bad experience. Well, this was a bad experience. So I get in there, do a couple cable flights, and I do a free flight. Beautiful.
Oh my.
One turns into two, two into four, four into eight, eight into 16. Before you know it, man, I'm up there making turns left and right and landing and all this. I was mastering the control. And what got me there was it wasn't just a stupid risk. There's three things that I considered. One, am I trained? Yes, I was trained. Two, is the equipment safe? The equipment is safe. Three, do I have a proper crew, a safety crew? And I did. What happened to me was simply a mistake that got way out of hand.
Mm.
So all I needed was the courage to get on it one more time. And then before you knew it, I'm traveling the world doing these big events. And there's little mishaps along the way, but everyone likes to focus on the crashes because
Yeah.
that's the most gorgeous thing. When you see that on video, you're like, oh,
Yeah. 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 Gosh, this is This is fascinating. And again, for sort of staying with the grow yourself uh, idea. Can you talk a little bit about your mindset and what it took to rebuild, just at this point, to rebuild yourself and your thinking? I'm kind of stuck to the idea of what you talked about get back on the horse immediately. I think this is something we all struggle with to varying degrees. I would submit getting back into a jetpack is a whole different level,
It it,
but the
it,
principles
tra-
goes across the board,
it does. Let's take a car, for instance, or a motorcycle. If you ride and you crash,
Hmm.
you want to get back in that car and you want to drive. Now, you might be more cautious. You might be driving a little bit slower, but at least you're doing it. And you build up your confidence again, because the last thing that sticks in your mind is that crash, and it haunts you. And then you beat yourself up. What would I've done better? What have I done different? What about this? But when you get back on something after you have a fear, it's like the little exposure. If you're afraid of snakes, you start exposing yourself to snakes real safely at first, up until you're comfortable, until you can pet one. Don't pet one that bites, but pet one that's friendly. And it builds up a tolerance within you. Okay, because that then says, well, if I can do that, then I can do this. Well, I've overcome this. Now I have the confidence to attempt that.
It seems to me, though, Dan, to just go on top of what you're saying, is that not that it necessarily has to happen or that you would recommend this sort of thing happening, but if you're able to get back on the horse and build the confidence up, you've also bridged that serious hyper focus that you also need too, because and it's not it grows out of fear at first. I think that you're so focused because you don't want to screw up again. But I think at some point, and I'm only just talking out of the side of my mouth, at some point, those two ideas merge, that you've got this real hyper focus that you need to perform something like that. But at the same time, you've also got the confidence as well. And so those two things can sound like a powerful combination.
And I would toss in one other thing: respect
Oh, love it.
for what it is that you're doing. Because all during my stunt work, all those years, I never got hurt. I was in my invincible stage.
Yes.
And this was the only thing that really bit me, and it bit me hard. And I said, okay, I need to respect this. Now, it affected my performance a little bit, so I'm not pushing the envelope like I used to,
Hmm.
but it gave me more respect, meant more flights, more checks, more
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But
That
you're absolutely right in what you said.
it makes a lot of sense. I started even thinking about surfers, who
Yeah.
surf these crazy waves that are incredible and that they have some catastrophe that they break their neck and have to get back on, and they always talk about the respect for the ocean and the wave and mother nature, the force, which all of this is relative. Wow, this is so fascinating. So move us forward a little bit more. So you got back on, you're now being successful, you've developed your confidence and respect for what you're doing. Then
Yeah.
what?
2007 was a big year for me. I got married, and we were performing in the Rose Parade, which was in Pasadena, California. So it was a big surprise. It
Mm.
was the 150th anniversary of Oklahoma.
Oh wow, probably saw that. Mm.
So they had a float, and it stopped, and the present top opened up, and there was a lift that lifted me up to the top of the present. I took off, flew down the parade route, got about down where I wanted to get, turned around, realized I flew too far, because I had to get back to give a flag to the governor who was on the float. Oh geez. So I pop it into high gear, and I am hauling butt trying to get back
Wow.
to the float. And then I'm coming in real quick trying to land, and it's sputtering a little bit. So I'm thinking, oh, great, here it is in front of 400 million people. the human lawn darts. And I just turned the throttle off a little bit too much, popped back on, landed, had about a half a second of fuel left, presented that. And then George Lucas was driving by because he was the grand marshal that year.
Oh, wow.
And he saw me and he called me over. And I was getting ready to do an interview with John Neighbor on ABC. And I just walked away from John and started walking towards, George Lucas, because he's calling me and security's coming up behind me. But what's security going to do? Tackle Rocketman in front of 400 million people?
Yeah.
I don't think so. So Mr. Lucas and I had a little conversation there, and for the life of me, I don't remember what he said. I was so starstruck.
I can
I
only
mean, heck,
imagine.
even in the background, you see the two helmets. I've flown as Boba Fett. That's the helmet I wore when I flew as Boba Fett. And the Stormtrooper, I flew as a Stormtrooper for conventions.
Whoa.
For Lucasfilm. The whole get up the garb. That was probably one of my funner flights, was portraying those characters that I saw in the movies when I was just 11 years old. So
Gosh.
anyway, shortly after that, a couple years later, we're pregnant with my son. And something that people don't know about, Rocketman does not pay a lot of money.
Oh,
Now, when you
that's-
look after all those years that I've flown and what I made less than minimum wage. Now, sure, I'd get several $1,000s for a flight, but if you're only doing one flight a month,
yeah.
one every other month,
Wow. That
how do
surprises me a
how do you
little
make
bit.
a living? So I'm trying to think to myself, how am I going to support my family? Now,
Yeah.
something else that's not talked about, well, it's talked about a lot sometimes, is the anxiety. Every flight before I would take off and fly, my anxiety was getting worse. So much so I would have to take half a Xanax just to calm me down. And it wasn't because I was afraid of crashing. It wasn't because I didn't know how to fly the thing. It was just remnants from that crash where I suffered
Wow.
with those skin graft surgeries. And I was very anxious. And then every once in a while, I'd have a flight where there was no anxiety. It would be the most simple flight: fly up, fly around the stadium, land, piece of cake flight. And the sound in the stadium and the people stomping and the yelling and the noise, I felt like a gladiator going out to do battle for my life.
Wow.
And the anxiety would get really bad. So I had to start thinking about, what am I going to do? And Kenny wanted to make a TV show at the time. And I thought, okay, if we do a TV show, then I can get a name for myself, maybe go into public speaking, do podcasts. And that didn't come to pass. And I'm like, if I could just hold on a little bit more, if I could just hold on and fight this anxiety. And then Guinness Book of World Records calls, and this is kind of the end of the trail for my Rocketman career. They call and they want to do a world record flight. Well, like I said before, I don't want to do height. I don't want to do speed. You know what? I'll fly through some columns. We'll make it a slalom course, because it doesn't matter. As
Yeah.
long as I land, I'm going to get the world record. It doesn't
Right.
matter,
Yeah.
So, and it's good TV, no audience there. It's just three pillars.
Were you it, by the way, in the world? Was that just you that did that? Nobody else? Was there competition or?
We had another pilot
Oh, you
named
had another.
Eric Scott.
Okay.
Yeah. But he kind of left to do some other things.
Okay.
So at the time, I was the only one flying in the world.
Interesting. Yeah.
So if you
Okay.
wanted a Rocket Man,
It
it
was
was
you. It
me.
was Dan.
And if I
Yeah.
was sick, I'd just suck it up and do it
I
anyways.
heard that. Okay. So the columns. Yeah.
So I take off and I'm very calm and collective. And I got a POV camera on my chest, beautiful footage. You see me lift off, fly around. You see the clock ticking away. I don't make right turns very good. I'm like Zoolander. You can't turn one way.
Interesting.
So fly around and I eat up too much time and I'm coming in. And for some reason, the rocket belt runs out of fuel at 24 seconds.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know why. Never found out why. I think someone somewhere made a mistake, but I come crashing down and the footage is gorgeous.
Oh Lord.
You
How
hear
high up?
the about 15 feet, you hear the the sound of the fuel going out. You see me land, crash, the dust flying up, flipping over, my flight suit's all torn up, the safety guy's running up. Again, it's all in the documentary. It looks great. It's just beautiful. That is if you're not the one strapped into it.
Yeah.
So I was a paramedic by that time because I was thinking about what I was going to do with my future. So I was a paramedic and I felt tingling in these three fingers,
Ugh.
but not in this one. And I knew exactly where the injury was.
Oh wow.
I'm like, dang it. And then I'm embarrassed because it's going to be on national TV. Rocketman
Jeez.
crashes. They're putting a neck collar on me, taking me to the hospital in an ambulance.
Jesus.
Just, and by that time, Kenny had had enough of me and I've had enough of him. And we're just like, that was it. And I had to, I lost my identity. I
That
had
was
an
actually
issue
my
with,
next question. Yeah.
yeah, I had an issue with painkillers because I had been on painkillers in the past, got off them with no problems.
Yeah.
But with my anxiety, I was just taking my prescribed amount, but I couldn't stop taking it. I couldn't wean myself off of it.
I see.
So I had to get that in check. And then the marriage was going south and ended up getting a divorce. Now we're still great friends and everything's good with that end. But at the time it wasn't working. I lost everything. I had no savings. There's no TV show. There was no way for me to make a money. I just had my paramedic license and then I had to heal from my broken neck.
Wow.
And that was a small break, so it wasn't a very serious break,
But
but still, a
you
broken
couldn't
neck's a
work.
broken
Yeah,
neck.
no, broken neck, and and it's
I
gonna,
couldn't work.
yeah,
Yeah,
you couldn't work, and those things I would imagine haunt you for life. You know
yeah.
the after effects of the injury and so forth. So that's the thing. Did you, Dan? Did you come to this place where you know said to yourself, wow, I mean, who am I? What am I? I mean, I'm nothing right now, got nothing. Your whole identity was caught up. And I think it's harder to be, to be a superhero, if you will, and then suddenly nothing.
Right, nothing. And what am I going to do with my life?
Mm,
Who am I really?
mm,
Because I'm kind of living two lives, the performer part, which is fun and everything. And then I had my regular home life and how am I going to raise take care of my son and my family and all that. But I had my paramedic because the paramedic always intimidated me. So I said, I'm going to get my paramedic. And by that time, I was already volunteering at a fire station. I was working for Care Flights in Dallas, running 911 calls and stuff. So it was pretty good. And then I did something that I used to do in California was work on the movie sets as a medic. So I started going out there, and again, here comes that work ethic. I just hustled. I reached out to producers, I reached out to production houses, and I said, hey, look, if you're looking for a medic for any of your productions, call me up. Here's my email. And I created a small business. Well, when I had crashed, I would get calls and I couldn't do them because I was
jeez.
temporarily disabled. So I'd call up my buddy and say, hey, come work this job. I'll pay you half. I'll take half. Okay. Well, it started to get busier and busier.
Wow.
And then by the time I healed and I could go back to work on the ambulance, I was booking medics
That's
across the
incredible.
nation.
That's crazy.
And they would say, hey, do you have anyone in Florida? No, but I'll find you somebody. And I would track down medics in Florida and I would hire them. I say, hey, look, I'll pay you 20, 25 bucks an hour. Do this show. This is the kit that you have to have. And I streamlined that process. So to date, it's 10 years, a little more than 10 years now, but 10 years, we've got 12,700 registered medics nationwide.
What?
And in 10 years, my company has grossed over $10 million. So I think that what God was doing with his anxiety, he's like, you got to stop being Rocket Man. I got something else planned for you. No, no, no. I want to play. I want to play. So he pulled me out of that position, and then he gave me the national set medics. Now let me ask you a question. If you had $1 million fall in your lap right now, what would you buy for fun?
Oh goodness. For fun, just for the fun, probably.
Yeah, for fun.
Maybe if I could find a Swiss chalet in
A Swiss
Switzerland,
chalet. Okay.
if I could afford that with $1 million. But I don't know. I mean, wow, that's a tough
A
question.
car or something.
It could be a car. Yeah,
You know what I bought?
what?
I bought the jetpack. And I bought the hangar. I bought the jetpack and the hangar because Kenny had died several years ago. So
I did not see
his
that
widow,
coming.
yeah, his widow was looking to sell one of the rocket belts. And I ran into her, and this was just after COVID. COVID was particularly good to us because everyone needed a medic.
Mm,
And she
yeah.
told me what she wanted for one of the rocket belts, and I said, "I'll write you a check right here, right now." And she sold me the name, she sold me the website, she sold me the rocket belt,
What?
and then I bought the hanger. So God pulled me out of that to give me something else, and then in a turn of events, He gave me the jetpack
That's
back.
that's that's when they say you've heard this before, God is a sense of humor, that's a little bit beyond a sense of humor. That's I don't even know how to do, probably if I were your mom or dad, I would be like, what the heck are you thinking, Dan? Are you out of your freaking mind?
Yeah,
That
when I
is,
was yeah, they weren't too proud of me when I was running around doing stunt work, making peanuts. But as soon as I started,
yeah,
going big time, then they were proud.
that's crazy, man. Keep going. This is I did not
Okay,
see this coming.
so I said to myself, you know what? My motto is don't let your last experience be a bad experience. My last
Right.
experience on this thing broke my neck. And if heck, I'm not going to let this rocket belt beat me. I'm going to fly it again.
Wow.
But if I'm going to fly it again, let's make a documentary out of it.
Oh,
Now, this is 10 years later. I'm 10 years older. I'm 54 at the time. This is in 2023. And I'm about 40 pounds heavier. And the rocket belt, if you're over 180 pounds, it doesn't fly very well. So I get a production company, we get it together, and they dive into the story. And that's all kind of based on the book, The Last Rocket Man, which is this whole story I'm telling you, but it
yeah.
dives deeper in it. So they base it on the book, and they bring in these other technologies to kind of show the whole scope of jetpack lore and where it came from. But the finale to it is I have to get myself into shape. Now I've got a lot more at risk because now I've got my son. I've got, a very successful business. If I get injured or killed, what happens? I had contingencies.
Yeah.
My ex-wife is to inherit everything that I have with the anticipation that that would lead to Danny, when he was old enough. So I had documents and everything that she would know how to run the business and where everything
Oh
was
my.
and stuff like that. Very unusual for a divorced couple, you
I would
think?
say, yeah, I think so. I mean, no,
But
no
that's how
doubt.
that's how well we get along.
That's no, it's great. That's great to hear. There should be more stories like this, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was 240 pounds, got down to 200. Then when it came to the show flight time, I jumped back up to 230 pounds because it was the holidays. And this was before Ozempic was really big. And I told the producers, is give me 1 month and I'll get down to a weight that will lift me. And we're doing cable flights. And then there was one
Wow.
flight that I did where I set my shoes on fire because the
Oh,
peroxide came out, and so my boot was on fire. That's great footage. And then I thought, I'm going to go skydiving again because I didn't have that edge that I had in my 20s and 30s.
sure.
So I start skydiving, and you know what I figured out?
Mm.
I don't like skydiving. It's scary. I've
That's
done 30 jumps,
yeah.
but it just wasn't for me. And I'm like, why am I taking on all this risks?
Hmm.
So finally the day comes for the big flights, and you'll have to see the documentary to figure out if I survived or not.
Well, I just can't wait to see if that happens,
Yeah,
because
did he live? Did he not live? Who knows?
if he didn't, I'm going to get really scared. That's crazy, Dan. It's on the one hand, I can imagine some people going, "Why the heck would you double down?" And but on the other hand, there are people that will say, "Good for you for not only getting on the horse again, but just to own the horse." And I mean and I mean metaphorically and otherwise, So, but before we kind of move on, share what are the little nuggets there, Dan, that you share with other people about, I don't know, about well, let me start with this one. You know, there are gonna be no doubt, and I'm not trying to turn this into a negative thing whatsoever,
No.
frankly, but I'm there are gonna be a lot of people that are like, God, really, you know, I'm a believer. I'm a follower of Christ. I believe the words of Christ and in the words of the Bible. And I often focus, listen, I've been through the Bible. I still do devotion, but if you ask me, there's only one scripture that I could actually quote and tell you, John 3:16, when I
Yeah.
was a kid. Other than that, I can never, but I know what I read. But there
Right.
is the scriptural piece about God turning, all things to good for those who believe in him. And and I rely on that one a lot.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Let,
jump
let,
in,
let
Dan.
me put it this way. For those of you that aren't believers, non Christian, when I was 8 or 9 years old, I threw it out in the universe that I wanted to be an adventurer, traveler, all that.
Yeah,
For those who aren't believers, karma was kind enough to come back and reward me for all my good deeds that I did through my life and give me the jetpack back because I put it out there in the universe. I think the Christian, the God reality is more plausible. But either way that
uh,
you
uh,
look at it, it's
yeah.
yeah,
No, I'm down with that. That's really a great way to put it. And but in that one scripture, wish I could just think of the actual scripture itself. You know, there is the notion that God can and will take difficult circumstances and turn them into good for those who believe, and that's a
yes,
different concept. And I don't know if God is saying for those who believe in Jesus Christ. I don't even parse it that hard, but there is a more, if you want to call it, a mystical sense that God did in fact create the universe and all those things within it. And sometimes you can read it biblically, but when I think about whether it's physics or whether it's math or whatever the case might be, God created all of those things. Like for instance, the notion about a vision, and manifestation, those sorts of things. I don't wholly dismiss those things. I just attribute it to God, that God gave us the ability to imagine. Let's take it back to your childhood, to imagine something and for it to be manifested. But I give that credit to God, and others who don't believe, they give credit to the universe. But I agree. I mean, I'd rather suggest that there's something more personal about that notion. And I hear this throughout your story, which is where I'm trying to go with this little segment here, is trying to understand the principles at play here, whether you strictly attribute them to God or just universal laws, such as the law the law of, well, like the law of gravity. There's certain things that you can't violate, but if you learn to work with gravity, it can enhance your being in that sense. So I still want to ask you about these things that you learned along the way, how you can impart some of these nuggets that are in your book about learning, growing, changing, succeeding.
What for me, what it comes down to is my biggest fear is living my life with regrets. I
Okay.
don't have regrets.
Mm.
Now, to backtrack a little bit with my flight in the documentary, I mean, honestly, did I really think I was going to die? No. What's the worst that I was going to happen? Break my legs? But still,
Okay. All right.
so I wasn't really that concerned about me losing my life because I've done hundreds and hundreds of
Yeah.
flights.
I'm tracking you.
But I would regret it.
Mm.
I would rather have a broken leg and never fly it again than not fly it and wondering for the rest of my life, what if? What if is a very lonely
Yes.
phrase.
Yes, it is.
What if I would have asked this girl out? What if I would have tried for this promotion? It doesn't matter if you fail. It just matter if you try. It's okay to fail.
Yeah.
Even if you get it back on the horse and it bucks you off and you say, that's it, I don't want to do it anymore. At least you got back on and you realize this isn't for me. That's success. That's not a
Yeah.
bad experience.
Yeah.
That's success. You found yourself.
That's right. And there you're getting right to the sort of the focus where I'd love to hear more about, and that is, you lost your entire identity,
Everything.
everything. So the question becomes, and listen, and for the people listening, everybody, none of us were on a jetpack, and we didn't try to climb this incredibly high building and fail and all these sorts of things. It could be something as simple as, I wouldn't say simple, but for this purpose, as you lost your career, or you lost your wife, or your family, I should say. You lost your marriage. The point is what do you say to people about rebuilding your identity, uh, in all of these circumstances?
I say what you do is feel emotionally,
Hmm.
but act on, um, oh, I had the word right there. Act logically. So feel your emotions, embrace your emotions, but act on logic.
Oh, I love that.
Act
Uh,
on logic.
Practically, you know.
Yeah.
So, what about the emotions, though, Dan? Can you discuss this idea? And I talk about this in my book as well, but in other podcasts as well. Is this notion that, it's a speech that I put together called "Do It Afraid," and it's the notion that I had tremendous fear about something, but I also had tremendous passion, and I tried to let the passion outweigh the fear, and sometimes it was just enough to get me over the fear, or I did it in fear. And so I'm asking about that, what you just said about feel the emotion. How do you regulate these things? How did you regulate your emotions? Was it just that you knew you were afraid, but you were going to practically take steps, or
Well,
logically?
kind of, and I kind of mentioned it before. It's when it comes time for me to get back on that thing, I'm
Mm,
afraid.
exactly.
So I feel the emotion, it's there, but logically I think to myself, okay, am I trained? Am I
Oh,
prepared to do this?
I love this.
A surgeon going in to do a surgery for the first time, he's afraid, but is he trained? Okay.
I see.
Are you well trained? Are your equipment, is it in good order? It is. Do you have a good nursing staff there next to you?
Wow.
You know, a pilot. First time you got to fly that airplane solo, you're afraid, but are you trained? Is your aircraft in good working order? Riding a
Oh,
motorcycle,
you're nailing this, man. That
are
you
you
just,
practiced?
yeah,
Yeah.
you so solidified this idea of feeling your emotions, but taking practical, logical steps. So, oh, wow. I mean, I think that's so usable for so many people in every circumstance. And so it's the idea that, yes, you completely lost your career, you completely lost your life in that sense, your identity. And so you feel anxiety, fear, sadness, grief, but you're saying, okay, stop for a second here. And let's look at this. That's all good. If you didn't feel anything, I mean, you probably didn't care that much. So now let's move over here to a more logical, practical state. Yes.
My thing, and honestly, it just comes down to my belief in God. I was never mad at God. I knew He had a reason. I knew He had a plan. It wasn't until I got face down on the floor and I just prayed, Lord, open up the doors that you want to open up for me and close the doors that are bad for me and make it obvious because I'm stupid.
Oh
You got to
gosh.
make it obvious to me. Open it up. And for people who don't believe, they won't quite grasp that. But for those who do, you know that little voice that you hear, the leading.
Mm.
It's not a thunderous, do this. It's a whisper of, I got you.
Oh wow. Got your back, huh?
Just trust me.
So
And
through
that's really what my
okay.
I wish I had something concrete that you could write on a post-it note and put it on your mirror in your bathroom and look at it every day and everything. And
I
really,
I
it's just prayer.
I cannot tell a lie though, even relative before the prayer thing and believing in God. Your this idea of recognizing and feeling your emotions, but think through it logically, I think's got feet for
Yeah,
days because you're, as you well know, your emotions, your perceptions, your your all these things can your perceptions they can lead you astray if you're in fear of something. And I'll say this, I don't want it to bring this on me, but I'll just say in my book I talked about this notion of this deep anxiety that I had, that I everything had gone wrong, and I realized that I couldn't trust my perceptions at that time about what I thought about the future. And I would literally go to my wife and say, and I'm having so much stress and anxiety about this. Please help me correct my perceptions. And she would say something as simple as, "Yeah, Kevin, it's your anxiety and perception because it's not nearly that bad." And
yeah.
that would just make me, oh, I'm feeling so much emotion now thinking about that. Dan, through all of this, what surprised you most? What did you discover and surprise you the most about yourself?
Is just what a middle class kid was able to accomplish just by belief in himself. Just in That's a very good question. I'm trying to find the words, but the the human body, the human mind is amazing. It's very resilient.
Mm.
And when you apply yourself, you can't begin to see the benefits and just the spin-off benefits that come off of just being persistent. Persistence will really get you just about everywhere.
Persistence. Yeah, see another really great notion there. And so how do you not sure what the question is, but how do you help people think about persistence? We know what it is. It's just, continuing to try again. But as you well know, that's a little fluffy once you're in the thick of thin things and you're like, my life sucks right now. I have no room for persistence.
Well, you got to have persistence because you will never get to the next level. But there is a point when you have to say enough's enough. It's like, young upcoming stuntmen would ask, well, how long should I spend pursuing my stunt career? You know what? Give it 2 years, give it 3 years at the most. But if you're not paying your bills by the end of those 3 years, it's time to find something else.
Yeah.
Have a backup plan. Have something else. Paramedic was my backup plan
Wow.
to be in Rocketman, and that what came very late in the game. Have a backup plan and pursue your dreams. And if your dreams don't come through, at least you know, at least you tried it. Nothing wrong with that. And
And
then,
and I think that's what you mean by in your book, and you mentioned it here today about not allowing your last experience to be a bad one. That part of what you're trying to do is get back on the horse, but the other thing that you're trying to do is again, you're working with this idea in your head that you don't want to live with regret, and that's maybe that's important to for all of us to if there's something that's really important to us and it's just leaving nothing but a bad taste in our mouth, you got to resolve that. You got to deal with it. Correct?
correct. Now, don't be a stalker. Like, oh, I should ask this girl out. Well, she says no, accept it and keep going. But don't
Yeah.
be persistent.
Right. Yeah.
Don't,
That's yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Don't be an idiot. Yeah.
know when, use your logic. Don't,
Hmm.
that's acting on your emotions. That's not
Hmm.
acting on your logic,
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Right.
there's always asterisks to everything.
There really are. You're exactly right about it. I love that phrase. It depends. But listen, so maybe we just talk briefly about your book specifically. Tell us about your book and how it all came about, and just I mean, this was a book that was being written whether you wanted or not. But the point is that you just decided to move into a book, The Rocket
Yeah,
Man,
yeah.
The
And
Last Rocket
basic
Man. Yeah.
the last Rocket Man, and because I will probably, unless I train somebody new,
Mm.
which might be the first Rocket Woman, who
Hmm.
knows? Hmm.
Mm. Mm. Oh, interesting.
Basic, yeah, basically everything that we've talked about,
Hmm.
it dives into it deeper, and I express my feelings. It's better expressed in word than it is in speech
Yeah, sure. No, it
because
is.
I'm searching to find the words,
Yeah.
and I'm looking in the camera and all that. So,
Yeah.
and there's some funny stories and some other stories of travel, close calls, some hilarious ones, some, what was it like to get past some of the injuries that I had, the growing anxiety and how I dealt with it, good and bad. Uh, the eventual fallout that Kenny and I had, and then the where we
Wow.
I forget the word, but we kind of reunited before he passed.
Reconciled. Yeah.
Reconciled, thank you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we reconciled before he passed,
Good.
and
Good.
so basically the book is a deep dive into the psyche and what got me to this and what kept me going throughout
Yeah.
my entire career. And even there's a couple chapters on the documentary because they both were happening kind of at the same time. So
Is there what is there one central message that you would like the book to impart? I mean, what's the central message about the last Rocket Man?
beyond the other things that I mentioned, the message is it's okay to pivot in your 40s and your 50s.
Mm.
If you find yourself in a position that's not working, not only is it possible to survive a pivot, but it's quite possible that you'll thrive. So
Oh,
don't be afraid of pivoting in midlife. If it's not working for you, find something else. There's still a lot of life left at 40 and 50.
there are those who I believe they not only do they pivot with ease, but they've thought about the pivot well ahead of time. So they're just this type of person that thinks about it and then they make the pivot and all works. But I don't suspect these are risk takers. These are the crazy people like perhaps you and I and others out there who are really going after something. I would submit to you that a person like you, it's a hard pivot, maybe. God guided you into an incredible pivot, but I would think for others, they would spend a lot of time looking backwards, going, God, I just don't know if I should make this pivot. And it's a long, hard, perhaps even excruciating pivot. But at some point, you
It's
got to pivot, right?
it's difficult. It's
Mm-hmm.
painful, and there's no compass.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say that God would be the compass, but if you're
Sure.
not typically a praying person, there's not much of a compass, and you've got to, think logically. Okay, what's the next step? Let your passion guide you. The
Mm-hmm.
emotional part. Where do I want to go? What is it? You can even think, what is it? Something that I've always wanted to do, and turn that into, and you find a niche somewhere. Now, these are all platitudes and we're talking and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's different, but the more you hear, hey, this person did it and that person did it, well, you know what? Maybe I could do it too.
That's right. And I think that's the big key is to personalize it. Well, let me just start to think about it. To even some don't even think about a pivot, but
Yeah.
that, and many of us maybe think of it more in terms of when we retire and these sorts of things. I'm not one of those things. I haven't retired, probably will never retire. I have some pivots that I'm making, but I don't think in terms of shutting this part of my life. If I had like a standard, I mean, like a normal job, then
Yeah.
I would
Not,
retire from that. But I still think with my mentality, it would still only be a pivot. I would not say, I might say, like I retired from the Air Force. I say that I retired my Air Force career, but that was that. It wasn't a retirement in any stretch of the imagination. I don't think at this age I'm going to think about it either. But
yeah.
then there are others who have to say, okay, I'm retiring this part of my life, and now I'm going to pivot and I'm going to do something like you said that's really meaningful that maybe I never thought I should try or could try or
You're a
wow.
firefighter or a policeman
Yeah,
or
there you
other
go.
civil service, and you retire early. Man, that's great.
A beautiful
Now you
thing.
go pursue your dreams. You got
Mm,
your pension coming
pension.
in.
Yeah,
Now you're free to dream. What is it that you've
yeah.
always wanted to do? Get
I
creative.
love that.
Deep down, find out who you are.
Yeah,
It's exciting. It's more exciting than not. When you're forced into it and you don't have answers, it's a little
yeah.
scary. But if you look at it just a little bit different, it's kind of exciting. What is it that I've always wanted to do?
That is so fascinating what you're saying. And this goes back to the short conversation we had before we started here recording. And I had said to you, if I if I act like this awestruck kid because I'm sitting face to face with my superhero when I was a kid, forgive me. But to me this conversation brings that point around to full circle, and that is that, I'll just say I'm 67. I am not afraid to dream like a kid.
Yeah.
And I think some people get older and more mature and they go, "Oh, that's so stupid. That's such a you thinking like a kid." But I mean, like everything else, you don't want to be dumb and idiot about it, but allow
No.
your heart to flutter for a second, even at 60, 70, 80. I know people like this.
Yeah. Hey, it's nothing wrong with thinking about it. You do a little logic thinking. Okay, well, my bones are a little bit more brittle. Better not do that. Okay, so what?
Can
You
I
know,
tell you very briefly? I'm not able
yeah.
to just say this very, very shortly. A friend of mine, he was the very first person I believe that I interviewed for this podcast. His name is Werner Berger. He
Uh-huh.
summited all seven uh, summits in the world at 70.
Wow.
He called me about 2 months ago saying he's 85 or 86 or something like this, 87. I don't know. He said, Kevin, I'm getting ready to do a big retreat at Kilimanjaro. I'd like you to come along. This dude's 80 freaking 5 or so years old. But when you talk to him, Dan, he's like talking to a kid in a sense because he's
Yeah.
just got this giggly, incredible mentality about life, and you're never too old. It's incredible.
Yeah. And you know what? Some people, I mean, I'm not that person to just do that. I've done it. I'm finished.
Yeah,
I'm,
yeah, yeah.
but,
You
but
got
I
jetpacks to
love
fly.
people like that.
Me
Yeah.
too. Yeah. I'll have to introduce you to him. You will love this man. I mean, you will, and you and him will resonate a lot. Well, listen, let's uh let me just finish up a couple of questions here before I get to my final question to you. Well, three things maybe. First of all, is there anything that you would like to say that maybe I didn't ask you the question, or that didn't come out as we talked about here? I'm going
One
to
of the,
ask you about where people can find you and all that stuff, but I'm just
oh
talking
yeah,
about
yeah, no.
substantially.
Well, one thing that's very important that I didn't get to dive into and doesn't really need to dive into is don't panic. If you're in an emergency situation, keep thinking through it. I learned that on the ambulance and also doing stunt work. Just never panic, because when you panic, you don't think straight and you can't make decisions. So if there's ever an emergency going on, push aside the emotions, think logically, don't panic.
Do you have to prepare for, do you have to become better at that? Because it seems to me that there are those who I could tell them three times, and as soon as something goes wrong, the first thing they do is panic. Maybe because they've not trained themselves to not
More
panic.
training,
More
more
training.
training. Yeah.
I love this idea of what you said earlier about what was it? You had these three questions.
Uh, are you trained?
Yeah. Are you
Is your
trained?
equipment in good working order? Do you have a good support staff?
Yeah. To me, that's a set of principles and practices that just go across everything. I love that so much. My next question uh, is how can people find you, your book, your documentary, all of that? I've read excerpts from your book, and it's fascinating. It's a great read, and I highly
Thank you.
recommend it. But where can people find all of you?
Basically, rocketman.tv,
Mm.
not rocketman.com,
Right.
rocketman.tv.
.tv.
Book looks like this.
Hmm. And it's on Amazon too. Yeah.
It's on all of them.
Yeah.
Anywhere books are sold, you
Yeah.
can pick one up. And then the documentary will come out. We're hoping for the end of this year, might be the beginning of next year. It takes so long to edit and
Oh
add
yeah.
the music and do the color and the legal and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
it's good, and it's good for the whole family. It's got
Love that.
some great messaging, and it's a real feel good
Oh
story.
man, I'm so happy to hear this. Before my last question, Dan, will you please promise me that we will do another podcast when your documentary comes out?
Of course.
I'd love to
Of
watch it and
course.
talk to you about it. Okay, that's great. I would appreciate that. So, final question, Dan, what if you were to impart some advice on someone, and that they took that advice and put it into play, that it could almost immediately improve their life, what advice would you give to somebody? It could be something you already talked about or something different.
When you boil it all down from everything that we talked about, don't live your life with regrets.
Mm,
That's it.
don't live your life with regrets. I love that.
Regrets.
It's
And remember, just because you fail at something, that's not a regret. That's you
mhm,
tried and it wasn't for you, but you
right.
tried. So no regret.
Yeah, you do. You have a different mentality about something that you've tried and decided that it wouldn't work, as opposed to fell off the horse and said, as much as I love getting on horses, I'm just not going to try that again.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's,
Yeah.
look, I skydiving. I
Yeah.
don't want to do it no
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
I don't
But
care.
but 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 to your point, it's a decision you're making as opposed to a fear that you're avoiding.
Yes. You're basing it on logic, not on
Yeah.
emotion.
Yeah. I love that. Dan Schlung. Wow. My
Kevin,
hero.
it was great.
Listen, you're an amazing person, even beyond the whole jetpack thing.
Well,
And
thank you.
I'm so grateful to you and to God for putting you here on Grow Yourself and let you impart such, even just in your stories, it imparted so much wisdom. I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much for being on Grow Yourself.
It's so good talking to you, Kevin. Thank you for some wonderful questions. and just a darn good conversation.
Love that. It's my pleasure.